Straw Hut Media.
Welcome to another episode of Genuinely GG, you guys. Apparently, we have an amazing episode that someone forgot to mention more about her Jewish self, too. We always have time to hear about your Jewish side, though. Anita, what was it that you would have probably discussed in this episode about being Jewish that you feel like you missed?
I want to take it for this one time. It was for being Jewish and being darker. So there was a neighbor in our neighborhood that lived up the street, and he was like, white guy, would wear his collar up and just proper whatever family. And he, every time we would drive by his house to go down, so and that was Ridgeway, the street I lived on. Every time we went down Ridgeway, he if he was out there, he would yell at us and run up to the car and like try to threaten us.
What would he say?
And he would just be like, "Don't drive here, don't," like, or he'd be like, "Go home.
Oh no,
don't do this," or he just mean things. So, and I had a Jeep, so I had my top down and stuff. So my parents at one point made me take Stonehaven, another way to get home, just to avoid him because we didn't know what he was going to do.
Okay,
because maybe bring out a gun and shoot me or whatever.
Yeah.
So then that was that, and then a couple times when my parents would like take walks at night, whatever, he would come and say mean things like, "Don't walk past this," whatever. And he knew we were Jewish too because we were the Jewish family. Right. And everyone talks, and we were darker. But yeah, so then so one time my mom was walking and he came up and said, "Don't go this way anymore," to my dad. And then my dad, which being like very, very just passive and just not confrontational and stuff.
Soft-spoken.
Yeah, soft-spoken. So the guy goes into the house and my dad got so upset that he walked up to the house, knocked on the door. The guy opens the door and he's like, "Get off my effing fucking property. I'm going to call the cops, whatever."
Oh
my dad's like, "You cannot disrespect us." And my mom's just like standing there like, oh my God. He shuts the door. My dad puts his foot out.
Fuck yeah.
And he's like, "Don't." Yeah. So we kind of like stuck up for ourselves.
Good job.
One time my dad did that. And then he's like, so whatever, ended up kicking us, kicked my dad and mom off the property. Then we called the cops and everyone knew his last name and knew who he was. So the cops said to us, "Just drive the other way."
What?
Mm-hmm.
The cops said drive around, go the other way, do what the guy's asking you to do. Mm-hmm. All right. So for all of you guys that don't understand why we're talking about this right now, we have an amazing guest for this episode, Jared Karol, who is the author of A White Guy Confronting Racism. And we went in deep about talking about what it's like for white supremacy. And you guys know that Anita is from Ohio. So it was different for her growing up as opposed to me being, born and raised in LA around so many different colors of people. And so this story, you forgot to bring it up in the episode, but I'm really glad you got to tell everybody right now. You guys, if you like the show, rate us, review us, subscribe, please. It's like the best way to show us some love. And right now we're going to get into this amazing episode with Jared Karol.
You know her from Shaws of Sunset. You know she doesn't hold back.
I'm Middle Eastern. I am Muslim descent. I'm, probably disliked in more parts of the world than any other race or religion.
This is Genuinely GG.
Hello, Jared Karol.
Hello. Nice to meet you. How's it going?
Nice to meet you. I am very excited, nervous, and a little intimidated to have you on today, to be honest.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I'm intimidated too.
Are you? Really? Is it the knives? I'm hiding the knives.
Not really. I mean, a little bit. You know, I was a college athlete. I've been a speaker. I've been on stage. And every time something like this, I get a little nervous. But then it goes away like, as soon as we press record and boom, there we go.
Yeah, for me, it's similar. Like after so many years of, being on TV, I still sometimes need the red button to let me know that I'm being recorded because it puts me in like a zone. I just turn on. Wow, that weed's good. Okay.
Hey, you both are kind of going like a little fuzzy on me. Your video is that?
It's the weed.
It's the weed. We are good. And I took a good hit. Anita took a little good hit. We are in the zone, and we're so happy to have you here, Jared.
Thank you.
I would like to just jump right into it and tell everybody you have a book And not only is it a book, but you reference yourself as this, and your IG handle is this, a white guy confronting racism. I would love to decode that entire title and what that means, how you came about being this guy, how you went about naming your book this, and why you're self-entitled, this person.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, this is how long we have? We have 3, 4, 5 weeks to talk about it. No, but seriously, gosh, let's see. Where's the entry point into it? I think was a couple of years ago. I was looking for a job. It was almost 2 years ago. It was like November of 2019, and I was looking for a job. I had a long-term contract that had run out. I said, I think I want a job. I want some stability. I want a paycheck. So I hired a resume coach because my resume sucked and I hadn't really done anything for a couple of years with it. So I hired this coach and he was great. And he said, the first time we met, we're sitting in a cafe in person. Remember when we could sit in person before COVID? And he says, just tell me about yourself. I'll just take notes. So I start talking, blah, 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 blah. And I'm an extrovert. I'm a speaker. I'm a rambler. And he's taking notes. And after about 15 minutes, he goes, I was like, hold on a sec, stop. I said, what? He's like, in these first 15 minutes, you've referenced yourself as a white guy who gets it like 5 times. How come I don't see that in your resume? How come I don't see that on your LinkedIn profile? How come I don't see that anywhere? And I said, I don't know. He's like, that's how we're positioning you. And so it was really like a realignment of what I already kind of knew, but I hadn't really stepped into. Because I've been doing this work, when I say this work, social justice work, anti-racism work, D&I work, which I kind of lean away from a little bit because I think it has its problems. And so with his help, we kind of repositioned, and then I just started going from there. So it's really been about 2 years that I've kind of taken on this kind of label for myself. And then as you referenced, it turned into the book, and here we go.
When I see, okay, let me back it up before what I was going to say was like, you're not in my head to know what I was thinking first. I am considered someone brown skin.
Yep.
Right. I'm Middle Eastern. I am Muslim descent. I'm, probably disliked in more parts of the world than any other race or religion. I've always grown up with Black friends only. Mostly. I think until I was like, I don't know, in my 30s, I started having like Persian friends really. But before that, I was only hanging out with Black people. So for me, when someone references themselves as a white person, it sounds to me a little bit like reverse racism. And I feel like, and we see it every day. I think we're seeing it a lot right now in places because everyone's becoming so hyper alert about everything. So we're seeing all the slips and the mishaps. When you decided that this was your title, did you ever fear that maybe someone like me that is a different color, that unites with people more maybe of color, might say, oh God, yeah, of course he's a white guy, he could say that?
Yeah, I do. I think about it all the time. And, it's interesting you brought up, who you grew up with. I grew up with basically 99%, probably even more white people. Mm-hmm. So my whole upbringing was white. And I talk about it in the book too. Like, and I never used the N-word. I was never actively, aggressively racist, but it was just kind of like, it wasn't even in my world. And so, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, in our discussion, but through a series of just events and awakenings that I became more and more aware, and especially more recently, the last, I'd say 6-8 years, that not enough white people give a shit about racism, understand it. Maybe they think they do, they say they do, but then they're perpetuating systemic racism on all kinds of levels all the time. So what I'm trying to do, most of my audience in the book and kind of who I work with are white people, to say, hey, you have to step into this conversation. Mm-hmm. You're going to mess up. You're going to get it wrong. You're going to not know what you're talking about. You're going to offend people. And you have to do it anyway, because if you don't, then the status quo remains. Right. And so that's kind of the angle of why I've kind of stepped into this, because I feel almost, I think initially 20 plus years ago, it was kind of out of guilt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And there's more to the story, which we'll dive into. But then more recently, it's about like, no, wait, I have accountability and I want to bring as many white people into that conversation as I can.
I like that. And I saw a quote from your book based on what you were just saying right now, which you say what white supremacy is. In that moment, you were saying white supremacy is an ongoing pandemic, a pandemic that we can see and hear and feel all around us if we are willing to see it and hear it and feel it. That hit me kind of deep because it's so simple. It's just such a simple thing you would think, right? But it's so difficult because they don't want to see it. And that's what I'm wondering. Do you think people... So Anita's from Ohio. So she's a Persian girl from a very different upbringing than me. I'm born and raised in LA. I saw a lot more colors here. You know what I mean? You probably saw a lot more white as well, right?
A lot of white. Yeah.
You know, so do you, when you hear something like that, like, and do you ever think about times in Ohio, like, I wish if they were to just understand how simple it is to see me is the same. Did you have those experiences?
I was kind of, because I was born there and raised and people knew our family, luckily people saw me as like white.
Or do you think that they saw you as white?
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
Because maybe you thought of yourselves as white and you assumed that they thought you were.
Yeah.
But like when I look at it, like, you know, that one, maybe the Indian family in London, because, you know, there's a larger population of Indians that get mistreated quite often by people. But it's like that one successful Indian family in a predominant white neighborhood that they are acting white. Like, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody, we saw the story of Queen and what his dad was like. He thought he was this white. We didn't realize that people are looking at them differently as much as they think they are white, you know?
Yeah. Well, you're talking about like kind of a couple different potential concepts, like white adjacency. So maybe people say, hey, she's not white, but she's kind of white. So like she's one of us, right? There's that dynamic, kind of this anti-blackness, right? Then there's white passing and white presenting, right? Which are different, but kind of interrelated, right? So, you know, and all those, you know, I don't know you, Anita, of course, until now. Now I do. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Right, but I see a lot of, you know, I live in Oakland. So Oakland's a pretty diverse city, not as much as it used to be. I guess I'm partly responsible for that, moving here 18 years ago. But my point is, you know, you see a lot of diversity, but there is this kind of this anti-blackness that's maybe stronger or more prevalent. So if you are Middle Eastern, if you are Indian, if you are Latinx, right, maybe you're not as dark. And so you can, either you can knowingly like, hey, I'm going to try and pass as white because, you know, why wouldn't I? It's like more benefits, more privilege. Or people are going to see you as that. So you're like, well, if they see me as that, like, I'm going to go with it. You know, so there's those dynamics that take place in all kinds of contexts, in communities, at work, etc.
Do you believe it's a choice that people choose to remain uneducated, unaware, as opposed to admitting that that simplicity is actually, in fact, there and they can overcome that? Is it easier to be ignorant?
So yes, I think for the most part, it is a choice, especially for white people. We have had the privilege of being white ever since whiteness was even created by Portuguese slave traders back in the 1400s. I mean, if you know, two books that really capture not succinctly, but pretty thoroughly are The History of White People by Nell Irving Painter. And she says, here's how whiteness came into be. And then more recent, that was, I think, 2010. And then more recently, Ibram Kendi, who's, you know, pretty well known for his How to Be an Anti-Racist. His book, I think in 2016, maybe it was, Stamped from the Beginning, just shows how whiteness was even created to it was for economic and capitalistic reasons. Less like, oh, we're going to be mean to black people. It's like, no, we're going to create stuff that serves us and serves our economic interest. Oh, and it just so happens that they're black and, you know, they're less than. And then, you know, from there, boom, like, you know, the next 400 years is what we're living with today. And so to answer your question, like, you know, white people, there's enough out there, especially the last couple of years, where if they choose, they can go, oh, wow, yeah, I get it. So everyone, oh yeah, slavery happened, then Jim Crow, all the kind of the high level talking points we all kind of know. But I don't think people, especially if they're even a little bit aware of how it serves us to be white, are going to confront it, are going to combat it. And so they go, well, it's not that bad, or that's not what I meant. All the excuses that you hear on an individual and collective level, every day.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back,
Shaws of Sunset, we were the first Middle Easterns to have a show on an American network. There were so many protests. I think those same people now are the same ones who ask us for pictures and praise us. Yeah. Do you guys have a cabinet full of acne treatments and skincare products, but don't even remember what half of them even do?
It's nearly impossible to sort through hundreds of products I've tried to add to my skincare routine and will never try again. I can't tell you how many miracle products I've spent too much money on and never really understood the process or how the products even worked.
Turns out most skincare products don't do much. The best way to treat acne is with fewer products that are clinically proven and customized to your skin. That's why I'm excited about our new sponsor, Apostrophe. Apostrophe is a prescription skincare company that offers science-backed oral and topical medications that are clinically proven to help clear acne.
Apostrophe connects you with a board-certified dermatologist who will create a personalized treatment plan that is perfectly tailored to your unique skin. Simply fill out Apostrophe's online quiz and your skin goals and medical history. Then snap a few selfies and your dermatologist will create your customized treatment plan.
Apostrophe treats acne, and they can also help you hit your other skincare goals like reducing redness, wrinkles, and even dark spots. My favorite thing about Apostrophe is how easy it is. It's great to know I have a real dermatologist and that the plan is tailored to my skin. Submitting my visit was so quick and easy, I didn't even need to schedule an appointment. We have a special deal for our audience. Save $15 off your first visit with a board-certified dermatologist at apostrophe.com/GG when you use our code GG. This code is only available to our listeners. To get started, just go to apostrophe.com/GG and click Begin Visit. Then use our code GG at sign up and you'll get $15 off your dermatology visit.
That's apostrophe.com/GG and use that code GG to get your dermatology visit and save $15. We thank Apostrophe for sponsoring the podcast.
Recently, I'm on Bravo network, and there was another show on my network called The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And there was an episode that took place in the season where an Asian woman said to the white woman that, please don't tell me you're one of those people that says, I don't see color. Right? And that turned into a very big, large thing because her response was, but I don't see color. And then her repeating, yes, right? Right? Now, let mind you in all this, I would, back in the day, always say, I don't see people for their color. Like, I'm very new to this as well. I think it's a new thing for all of our society. We need to learn it together as opposed to punishing each other first and then teaching. But right now, I think a lot of people are just angry and that's what it is. But I would say the same thing somehow. But someone said, yeah, but you can say that because you are colored. And I said, well, how does that justify the logic to it, though? Because I have what? And that makes me angry. That makes me so mad. I'm like, okay, now I get it. I'm supposed to value you for your shape, your color, your background, and all this. Not say, I don't see all that. I see you as the same as me. Because I get it now. Mm-hmm. But it's like, I also understand what people are implying sometimes when they say that. How do you feel about this I don't see color situation?
Yeah, I'm kind of laughing because when I talk with, any friend, colleague, acquaintance of color, especially, a Black person, but really anyone of color, it's like there's this kind of this chuckle of kind of, I think it spans this continuum of like, just another person, like this kind of almost like annoyance to this really like pissed off Like if you don't see color, you don't see me. And so as a white person, like I'm very careful, a couple of things, not to position myself as an expert on race. I'm not an expert on race. I have done the work for 20 plus years. I have grown and evolved and changed, and I've read and listened and immersed and gone to events and all the things. So I feel like I'm in a position where I feel comfortable having these conversations, but I'm not an expert. I'm not an academic. I'm not a scholar. This book isn't 10 ways you can create an anti-racist workplace. It's not that kind of book. And I would say I would never, ever speak for any individual or collective group of color, whatever their color. So I want to get all that preface out of the way. But so to answer your question, what I would say is there's a difference between intent and impact. So when someone says, I don't see color, I think most of the time what they're trying to say is, I'm not judging you by your color.
Yes.
Which is a whole nother thing, which may or may not be true.
Right.
Because we're not even talking about bias and all the things, right? But really what it's doing is invalidating a person's color, their background, their race, their identity. And it's also for a white person who doesn't have fluency. It's an easy way to kind of get out of the conversation. Well, I don't see color, so there's nothing to talk about. So next, what about the World Series, right?
Right.
And so we see it all the time, this kind of sidestepping, rug sweeping, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's what the problem is, because with the privilege that goes along with that, you can do that. And if someone tries to say, wait a second, let's have this conversation. No. Why are you making it about race? And then there you go. Status quo remains.
So you believe, because I believe you did say that as well, in a of course, not aggressive way. I want everyone out there to understand I'm not speaking about this in an aggressive manner, but you did say that this is something that needs to be confrontational. It needs to be pushed. It needs to be enforced because of all the injustice. To find justice, we need to fix the injustice. And that's where the feeling and anger is coming from everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, I liked that you said that. It's hard. It's so hard to find that fine line. And to me, I'm a very logical person, perhaps a little too logical. I don't really have that fine line of, heart. To me, if I were to hear someone say that, I would be so turned on and intrigued and challenged to say, well, what did you mean by that? Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to assume what you meant. So right here, right now, let me know what you meant before I start assuming and creating my stories about you.
Exactly. Well, Gigi, you bring up some good points. And in the book, I kind of center 4 lenses, if you will. And they're not laid out lens 1 is this, lens 2, but they're interwoven throughout the book. And one is social justice. So kind of like we've been talking about, if we don't understand the nuances and the details of the history of racism and white supremacy, then it's all just a bunch of bullshit conversations, right? So we have to just understand that exists and has existed.
Well, let me ask you for 1 second. How do you, as a white man and someone who advocates for justice for everybody, how would you impose that on people who might come from a very racist upbringing? How would you impose this?
Yeah, well, it's hard. And I don't have the answer or really even an answer. I've found that there's always a continuum of people on this journey. I know it's kind of a cliche, we're all on a journey. We are, but I don't want to make it sound too trite. But for the folks that are really digging in and who are really against this and really angry and going to fight you to, there's no racism and blah, 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 all these things, those aren't really my people that I'm trying to reach. Mm-hmm. We don't need to change everyone for the systems to change.
Right.
So there are enough people, and I've seen this, I think we've all seen it just in our communities, in politics, in the media, your space, right? In workplaces where I'm spending a lot of my time. There are enough people who are more recently intrigued and waking up.
Because of the movement, the recent Black Lives movement.
I mean, I think, the three of us know that, Black Lives Matter and systemic racism from police departments didn't start with the killing of George Floyd. right? We know that. But
Yes.
for a lot of people, it was this moment, right?
Yes.
I think coupled with the pandemic, the other pandemic, what was that, 2 months into it, 2 or 3 months into it, and everyone's feeling vulnerable and disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And then this horrific thing happens and people are like, oh my God. Like, and it's like this guilt. How have I not known about this? Well, because you've chosen to not know about it.
Correct.
And so I think so helping educate people on the history of why this is still in 2021 happening, that it didn't start with George Floyd. So that's the social justice kind of lens, if you will. And then I think two others that you kind of alluded to are EQ, so emotional intelligence. How do we enter into these conversations with awareness, with vulnerability, with empathy? So if I come in, I say, Gigi, I don't believe you. Right. I don't believe that it's been hard for you to grow up Persian. Look at you. You're famous. You're on TV.
Right.
And you'd be like, you know what? Screw you. Like, you don't know me. I'm like, no, it's not hard for me. So it can't be hard for you. Right. We have a lot of that kind of thinking, if not explicitly saying. And so emotional intelligence is really like, hey, tell me more about your situation. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about, that incident you were talking about the other day about, when you were blah, 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 like really being present and believing other people's experiences. White people have a hard time doing that.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you 100%. I mean, not to bring in a completely different story, but just last night I was like on the phone with this guy that I'm recently dating, and it was sort of, I implied it's the same concept. It's, oh my God, what the fuck was I just saying? What did you just say that I brought this up?
About believing people's stories. I was just like, I started thinking about it. Oh my God.
I think the way it's affecting you, how it's affecting me.
Is like the first time
I am like, woo, I have not said a word.
This is like the first time I'm usually smoking the whole entire time. I don't even know. I
don't know. And I have lots to say because I'm Persian and Jewish, being born in like this crazy white place and being the only Jew and because,
anti-Semitism is real.
Have you experienced that?
In Ohio?
In general,
probably a little bit in Ohio because people did. So being a little darker, and I fit in a little bit more because everyone, again, accepted like Indians, like the Hindu. Mm-hmm. And so if you're dark, you're Indian. So I was just Indian and I was accepted. I think that was part of it. Plus, I think, does it make sense?
No, yeah, it's sad.
It's kind of sad because of their ignorance of knowing that there is like a Middle East and there are other, just brown people out there, and it's not just Indians. And so but I think in that case it was less than the whole like being Jewish. And we would get like those Jehovah Witnesses or different weird people coming to the door trying to give us stuff and make us, because we were known in the neighborhood to be the Jewish family.
You are known in the neighborhood, so
a
it's
little
like
bit, because like we never decorated our house for Christmas, and so we're like the dark house on the block.
Wow.
And we get those prank calls with some of the Jewish jokes left at our answering machine. I had a hard time with them, like having to get off for Yom Kippur and some certain holidays. I would have to go through take a note to 50 teachers for them to accept that, because here it's like everything shuts down.
You're in the land of Jewish people.
Everything shuts down. It was so weird when I first moved here. I'm like, wait, what? So that was interesting and some teachers would approve it, some wouldn't, and we would just have to get an F for the day or whatever. They just wouldn't,
Well, Anita, thank you for sharing this.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to wake up for a second from the smoke. So I'm coming back. So let's talk.
No, it's all good. Because, what you're sharing is exactly what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So if you don't share that, or I don't know it, or I don't believe it, or you tell me, or I read it or something, and I just dismiss it, then I just keep perpetuating the narrative that doesn't exist. And since it doesn't affect me, I've never had to, fight for my days off school, for my holidays. I've never had to do any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And so if I don't even know it's a thing and I hear about it, I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not a big, what is that? Right. And I just dismiss you. Mm-hmm. And so if you take that at an individual level, it's like, okay, that sucks for you. It sucks for her. It sucks for him. But if you take it at a systemic level, that's what perpetuates white supremacy.
Right.
And so that's what we're really talking about. How do we bring that EQ, that awareness, that vulnerability into our individual conversations and our spheres of influence, like our communities, our neighborhoods, our teams, our, you know, whoever we're kind of really hanging out with. In your case, like, you know, your audience, like, how do you bring these conversations and these stories so that people hear them, and hopefully they're less likely to keep dismissing them,
right?
And have some awakening, some evolution of consciousness.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was very difficult, especially creating Shahs of Sunset. We were the first Middle Easterns to have a show on an American network. There were so many protests against our show, and the people protesting were Persians, which was the interesting thing.
And what were they protesting about? Curious.
I think they were just scared for the exposure of what's real inside, you know, the culture, because we have a very long history of wealth. You know, we were the Persian Empire. We ran the world, you know, and I'm like, and every Persian will tell you that, but it's like a Chinese person could tell you, well, the Chinese Empire actually ran the world. You know what I mean? So it's like, but, you know, we have that history and that the richness. And I feel like Persians are so obsessed with the superficial aspects of it, to keep face, keep a front, pretend, wear your gold, drive your Mercedes, wear the Versace. But you know what I mean? You don't have a savings. You don't have this. You don't have that. But you have the gesture. So I think Persians were so obsessed with that. And they did not want the cameras to come in and expose it. And they didn't want to see that we're real people that have, you know, bullshit. We are broke as well. We have family issues as well. You know, we go through all that. But it was great. I think those same people now are the same ones who ask us for pictures and praise us. You know, so I get it's hard. It's a hard struggle for a lot of people, because sometimes we're so busy fighting our own people to wake the fuck up. Then we have to realize there's a whole world of other people out there that don't even have an ounce of that awareness that our own people even had. So it becomes a never-ending teaching psychological struggle, in my opinion.
Totally. And Gigi, thank you for being vulnerable. And I mean, I know this is your job and you do this, but it's still really powerful, like, to hear these stories, and people need to hear them. And that's one of the other lenses, is this lens of storytelling. Like, whose narratives are being shared by whom? Or do we get to share our own narratives? Do people from the downside of power, from who aren't part of the dominant narrative, i.e. white, i.e. men, i.e. straight people, i.e. cis people, right? Like, we call it the narrative of the privileged majority. So I can come in as a straight, white, cis, able-bodied, middle-class man, and I can like I'm never wrong.
Right.
I just go and I can bulldoze through the world, and I've chosen not to. But as I think we all know, like, so many people like me have not chosen not to, right? They've chosen to, leverage, not, to use that power and privilege to perpetuate the narrative of the privileged majority. And when it's challenged by anyone, really, but especially by someone like me, who's kind of quote unquote one of them, if we're on video, air quotes here, one of them, right? It's like, whoa, it's both. It can be really powerful. Some people will be like, just dismiss me out of hand. Like, who's this white guy talking about this stuff?
Right.
But then other people like, oh, wait, a white guy's talking about this stuff? Okay, I'll listen to him. Yeah. So it's unfortunate that it takes me or someone like me to get through to them. But hey, if they're going to be gotten through to, then I'm happy to be that deliverer of the message. Right.
And I think with the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of people saw both sides to that scenario. We saw the non-Black, we saw the white people that were protesting, were helping, were enforcing justice in name of humanity. And then we saw those ones that were taking the selfies and posting on Instagram and hashtagging BLM that turned into some other radical movement of its own. So again, it became a war within a war. Now we're not even sure, are we supposed to hashtag BLM anymore? We didn't even know what we were supposed to hashtag, because now we're being told it's being operated by some, It became a war within a war within a war, where even that white person that's there standing up for my colored people, their colored people, I'm questioning why they're there. And I don't want to be that human. I don't want to see that white person get punched by someone who questions their motives because they are taking a picture. Maybe they're a photographer who has been, representing justice their whole life, and they got mistaken for an Instagram influencer. There's little room for mistake. We're cancel culture. You're done, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to say, Jared, was that I love that you said in your Instagram, one of your posts, you said you don't have to be the perfect anti-racist. And that doesn't mean that every white person needs to be out there like you writing books and advocating so, loud and proud. But there comes a fine line with what you're okay allowing to happen in this world and what you close your eyes to in this world.
Exactly. I mean, you so well said, GG. And you said, you brought up just a minute ago, this idea of humanity. That's really what this is about. Yes. Right. And the first quote in my book, I just want to read it because it's from Toronto Burke.
Yes.
And I just finished her memoir yesterday, actually. So if you haven't read that, Unbound, it talks about how she founded the Me Too movement. And Unbound. It's so really powerful. But she says, I don't believe your anti-racist work is complete or valid or useful if you haven't engaged with Black humanity.
Wow.
Right. So, I mean, like it's relationships, it's seeing people. So, yes. I mean, going back to the whole, I don't see color and all these other things we've been talking about, like, wait a second, if we're actually engaging in each other's humanity and seeing each other, like we're seeing their color, their faults, their joys, their failures, we're seeing everything, and we're building those relationships. And that's how movements start at local levels, at community levels, at workplace levels, and then, it scales out.
Right.
The other thing, I just want to make sure that this before it doesn't get in, I do this work. I like to say, so my father was gay, and he died of AIDS in 2000.
I'm so sorry.
So I was, thank you. I was 27. So if people want to do the math and figure out how old I am. So I was 27. And, I said earlier, like, I'd say at that point, like my dad was trying to teach me. He didn't tell me he was gay till I was 14.
Oh, wow. Yeah. He knew. He was gay, though. He was out before.
Well, yeah. So I like to say I wouldn't even be like, Jared, why do you care so much about social justice and equity and all this stuff? I say, well, I wouldn't even be here if the world was an equitable place, because my father, as a gay man in the early 70s, he couldn't come out. Because he could, all the things, right?
Absolutely.
And so he did what he, again, air quotes, what he was supposed to do. And he married a woman, had a kid. That kid was me. Finally, a few years later, he said, okay, now I have enough courage. I have enough, momentum. And he came out and got a divorce and, moved to San Francisco. And I grew up in San Diego, so Southern California as well. And so all I knew is from like a 2 to 11 year or 14-year-old was that my dad lived, my parents were divorced and my dad lived up north. Right. Wow. And it was kind of cool to go to the city and ride the cable cars. Right. And like, that was my world as an 11-year-old, 12-year-old. And then when I'm 14, he says, I want to tell you something. I said, what? He said, well, Tom is my friend. And my dad never drove. So Tom was his colleague that always picked me up from the airport. He said, Tom's my friend. I said, well, that makes sense. I could figure that out. He said, and John, and this is John, this guy we hung out with all weekend. He's like, John's my boyfriend. I'm gay.
Wow.
So I'm 14.
How courageous of him, though.
I know. Well, that's the thing. Of course, as a 14-year-old, all I'm thinking about is like, oh my gosh, I have a gay dad.
Right. Were you angry? Were you like, this is a whole podcast episode right here.
I wasn't saying us.
I would love to have this as an episode and talk to you about this, because there's a whole world of people on how they hear about their parents. Yes. And I'm not coming out as lesbian or anything, but oh my God, I'm not even going to go into details. We're going to save this for our next episode, Jared. We're having you, I already know, oh my God.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back...
I've even been arrested once, but they didn't take me in.
You were in cuffs, Anita?
No, they were really nice because apparently I had like a bunch of...
This went dark.
I want to see, it always ends up dark. Healthy snacks have a bad reputation, and let's be honest, Most don't taste very good, they don't fill you up, and they certainly don't satisfy your cravings. This episode is sponsored by Monk Pack, who makes snacks that taste like our favorite sugary treats, but with 1 gram of sugar or less.
Not only are Monk Pack keto granola bars so low on sugar, but they are also low in carbs, containing 2 to 3 grams of net carbs, and they are only 140 calories. Plus, they're gluten-free, grain-free, plant-based, and non-GMO with no soy, trans fat, sugar alcohols, or high-intensity sweeteners. That is a really healthy granola bar.
While they're great for anyone following a keto lifestyle, they are also the perfect snack for anyone who is trying to eat better or cut back on sugar and carbs without sacrificing taste. Monk Pack Keto Granola Bars have a soft and chewy texture and come in delicious flavors like coconut cocoa chip, peanut butter, and blueberry almond vanilla. My favorite has been the blueberry almond vanilla. It tastes just like those old-fashioned blueberry donuts, but I know it's almost no sugar.
They're perfect for a quick breakfast, a snack between Zoom calls, or a guilt-free dessert. They taste incredible, and you can't beat the low sugar nutrition they provide. And by shopping online, you can avoid another trip to the grocery store by getting Monk Pack delivered right to your door.
Try it for yourself, and you'll see. And we have a special deal for our listeners. Get 20% off your first purchase of any Monk Pack product by visiting monkpack.com and entering our code GG at checkout.
And Monk Pack is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you don't like it for any reason, they'll exchange the product or refund your money, whichever you prefer. To get started, just go to munkpack.com and select any product. Then enter the code GG at checkout to save 20% off your purchase. Monk Pack, delicious, nutritious food you can count on. We thank them for sponsoring Genuinely GG.
Or you're saying something about talking with the guy you're dating last night. You never finished the story because I cut you off.
Yeah, I want to hear the rest of the story.
I want to hear the story.
I don't even remember the fucking story.
You said you brought up that you had a conversation with.
Yeah, but he was saying something that he was saying a story that made me think of that. And I was trying to relate something. It was something about saying something or I don't even remember.
What was it?
I don't know.
Well, what happened with your conversation with me?
I'll have a whole conversation with Anita after this. I think Anita's just trying to hear the conversation about the guy.
No, I'm really curious about what happened that it tied into our conversation today.
Remember.
She doesn't remember.
It'll come to me. Hopefully it'll come to me. Jared, I am very grateful for you for being here and talking to us. I mean, we've only barely peeled the tip of the seal to just the tip. We literally just started. There's so much to discuss, and it's a very great conversation. And I want people to understand one thing, that what we're talking about here, even though it can turn political because it somehow always ends up getting political, people need to understand racism has nothing to do with politics for you as an individual. Maybe your leaders or who you're choosing to look up to, maybe it is for them, but it's up to us to understand that it's not, Democrat, Republican, blue, red, green, it doesn't matter. It's a choice. Mm-hmm. It's a choice, and you have to choose to know better because we all bleed red, no matter how you look at it.
So well said, Gigi. And that's why I tell, in the book, and just as I'm telling you and your audience, like, wait a sec, what does your dad being gay have to do with racism? It's like everything, right? Because it's like, once he died, I was 27, I was surfing, I was parking cars, I was kind of having a good life, right? But I wasn't really doing anything impactful. So when he died, I'm like, okay, Jared, like you've heard enough from your dad. You've been invited into this new realm of who you could be, but you haven't taken it. Mm-hmm. And then when my dad died, I'm like, all right, I don't want to be that guy anymore. I want to be this guy. And so part of that journey was being like, all right, I got to learn, I got to grow, I got to develop, I got to evolve. And yes, it started with my dad and the LGBT community and that, but then I soon realized yes, the issues are different for different oppressed and marginalized communities, but there's the same that they're oppressed and marginalized. Yeah. And they're the same systems and same narratives and same mindsets and same power and privilege. So it was a relatively easy connection to go from, LGBT kind of focus with my dad to racism, because I started centering humanity and meeting people and having friends and colleagues. I'm like, wait a second, I care about you.
Yeah.
I care about you. And I know enough now because I've learned enough and I've done my own self-work that this isn't okay with me, even though it doesn't impact me directly like it does you. And so that's where the conviction and the commitment kind of starts, is like, this isn't okay with me. And I'm not going to be perpetuating what I've been perpetuating in the past.
I want to applaud you for not being okay with it. I want to applaud you, Jared Karol, for being a white guy confronting racism. I want to applaud that. I hope that it can influence many, many people, but if only just one, allow it to be that, person. I just would love to know so much more from your mind. You're really, you've seen the world. I have my own issues. I have my own issues because of what I've dealt with in my upbringing, being Middle Eastern, going through 9/11, going through so many wars that we've had in the Middle East throughout my life living here. So I would have so much to talk to you about, and I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you taking a stance. I appreciate you being brave. Really, thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome. And if there's one message for your audience, listening, like, what can I do? What should I do now?
Yes.
Okay, I've heard this conversation. I've been moved. I don't have a list of do's and don'ts, but one thing I will say is believe people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Believe
Absolutely.
people when they share, however small or large their story is, whatever they choose to share. If they say something happened to them, believe them. Enter.
That's it.
I remembered. I just remembered.
That's what I was right when he said believe. I was like,
that's what he said last time.
So we're gonna go now to the guy that she's dating. The conversation last night.
We'll talk about it later.
But it relates.
I did remember it. That it was the believe people thing. No, he's right. Believe people.
Believe people.
Get to know people. Hear their story. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because you never know what someone's story is. You'll be shocked.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be shocked.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the movie. What was it? The Green Book.
The Green Mile?
No, not the Green Mile. The Black Book.
The Blue Book.
The Red Book.
The Red Book.
The Green Book, about driving for Black folks driving across the country where they can stay.
The Green Book.
The guy,
I was right.
The musician. Yes.
Viggo Mortensen, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. He's
the Green Mile.
Okay. Oh my God. She's just so. Jared, thank you for being here. We will not let you leave until Anita does her thing.
It's a game. It's called Forgive Me, I Have Sinned. But I'm going to take it a little lighter today because I feel like my questions are just supposed to be funny and stupid and like no-brainers. And I usually get really intense and like she always gets mad at me. So here we go. Jared, have you ever been arrested?
No. I got a minor in possession of alcohol when I was 20.
Okay.
So I got a ticket, but I didn't really have to spend any time.
You had a misdemeanor. You didn't have a felony of any sort.
I think that's what it is. Yeah. Okay. So the answer is no, I have not.
If I asked her that question, I think we would be here for like a few weeks.
All of mine are misdemeanor offenses. All of them. Done.
No judgment here.
No judgment anywhere.
For
you or for myself either.
I've even been arrested once, but they didn't take me in.
You were in cuffs, Anita?
No, they were really nice because apparently I had like a bunch of tickets everywhere and like speeding tickets or parking this and that. And so they all accumulated and you have to get them released. So I had some in Vegas. I had some in Ohio. So I was driving forever with a suspended license.
So you had a warrant.
So I went through a checkpoint. Because I'm like, I didn't drink. It's fine. Like, I'm just going to drive through. And I didn't have front plates because in Ohio, you don't have to have front plates. So they pulled me over and on Sunset at this checkpoint with all these lights on me and stuff and confiscated my car for like.
Wow.
And it said they could have arrested me because of that. And then he's like, but we're not going to take you in. Good. He's like, just call someone to pick you up. And then I became like best friends with everyone. And then it was great.
And you were about to talk shit if you asked me the question?
But I didn't do anything. I drove through a checkpoint sober on fucking 4th of July. I didn't drink.
This whole facade. All right, go,
you
girl.
You said, well, you believe everyone's story. Believe in everyone.
I believe your story. And, that might be an example of white passing or white adjacency privilege.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a story in the book I tell that's like, hey, I got pulled over by a cop for running a stop sign or something. This is just a couple of years ago. And it's all, in this dark space with no place to pull over. And I'm kind of scared, but I wasn't scared for my life. And he just came in and he said, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, hey, follow the rules next time. Have a good night. Like,
yeah.
Okay, thank you. what I was most worried about, my insurance rates were going to go up. If I was a black person, like I'm scared shit in this dark,
you'd be
dark
outside,
alley.
bent over the hood. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my God. This went dark.
I want to see it always ends up dark. I'm going to keep this line again. Have you ever cheated on a test?
Gosh. Yeah, I'm sure I did in high school. I don't have any specific memories, but I wasn't that good at chemistry, so I'm sure I cheated on some chemistry tests. Is that, I know it's not the most kind of revealing answer, but I think it's the best I got.
No, you're pretty good. That's a good guy.
Thank you, Jared.
And
your book,
the book.
Your book is out right now. White Guy Confronting Racism. Is this out? Where can people find your book?
Yeah, so you can go to a whiteguyconfrontingracism.com is where I'm really kind of driving people to that site to order it. And then it's also available basically everywhere. I've looked too. It's like, whoa, once you put it in the system, it gets distributed everywhere.
Yeah,
so even international, I don't know how.
That's very exciting. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it's in India. I have a friend in India.
Wow.
He's like, oh, I saw your book. I bought it. Yeah, so it's it's all over the place. So I'm really excited. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I hope it goes all the places where all the white people are as well. You know what I mean? I hope that everybody can pick it up just to understand that this perspective can be seen through white eyes. It doesn't matter what color you are. Like we said, it's for humanity. So I really hope your book reaches Mars and back, because people are going to Mars. Everyone needs to pick up A White Guy Confronting Racism by Jared Karol. Check out his IG, Jared Karol, White Guy Confronting Racism. His quotes are amazing. His mindset is amazing. And I think you're going to find him absolutely amazing the way we did today. Thank you so much, Jared.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you. You're very welcome. I appreciate you both, GG and Anita. Glad to be here.
Thanks for listening to Genuinely GG. Download new episodes every week. And if you haven't already, subscribe. And be sure to leave us a rating and review. And while you're at it, check out some of the other great shows available on Straw Hut Media.